The next question is from Aaron Cowper.
Minister Bishop, a recent survey by the National Union of Students found that more than 1 in 10 female university student respondents have experienced rape or attempted rape on campus. So why then, based on a single alleged incident, did the opposition vilify asylum seekers and reduce them to the status of convicted pedophiles, rather than propose effective measures to protect vulnerable women on campus? And why can't you call it what it really is, and appeal to underlying racist sentiment in Australia at the beginning of an election campaign?
Julie Bishop.
First, let me clear up one thing. We didn't compare asylum seekers to pedophiles. It was in response to a request from a reporter who linked it. But we must recall that under the government's mandatory detention system, which was introduced by Labor, which was supported by the Coalition, people who come to Australia by boat and claim asylum are put into mandatory detention so that their identity and background and security checks can be done. Because the government is overwhelmed now with the number of people arriving, the detention network system has broken down and people are now being released into the community and not kept in detention before the background checks, the identity checks and the security checks are completed. Now, in the instance we're talking about, people have been put into, it seems, accommodation in the community that is entirely unacceptable, and the government isn't taking any responsibility for the fact that a large number of people have been moved into the community, into accommodation that the government doesn't even know about. They didn't know that they were in student accommodation at a university. They didn't know that they were in unused office buildings, living in squalor in Parramatta. And Scott Morrison asked the question, shouldn't the people in that accommodation have been told that large numbers of people were being moved in?
Scott Morrison also wants to impose behavioural protocols on asylum seekers. What are behavioural protocols? Do you know?
What he was referring to was the fact that the government's just making this up as they go along. The policy has been clearly a failure. Ever since Labor changed the laws that had stopped the boats coming and stopped people taking that terrible journey to Australia, about 1,000 people are said to have died in recent years on that journey.
OK, but if you can come to my question, what are behavioural protocols? No one's explained this yet, yet he's talking about them.
The government is clearly just making it up as they go along. People were in a system of mandatory detention. They're now out on bridging visas, and there's no information surrounding those bridging visas. And we've got large numbers of people being moved into the community, and the government's not taking any responsibility for them. So we're rightly asking the questions that the Parramatta Council asked. Why weren't they told that people were moving in? But hang on a sec,
what are behavioural protocols?
That's the sort of thing I'm referring to.
Well, no, you haven't referred to it yet. What are behavioural protocols?
Telling the Parramatta Council, for example, that a large number of people are going to be moving into accommodation. In this case, it was...
as I understand it, behavioural protocol... Sorry, 1 second. Behavioural protocols are to be imposed upon the people themselves, the asylum seekers. So the question is, what are they?
Well, I believe he was talking about reporting requirements.
Well, he's talking about that as well as behavioural protocols imposed on the actual asylum seekers.
I see it as a reporting requirement.
Right, OK.
But
so
also,
no actual imposition on individual asylum seekers.
But also, I think the point that the university students have made is a fair one, and that is that if you are paying to stay in university accommodation as a university student, I think you're entitled to know if people who aren't uni students are being moved in by the government. You're entitled to know that.
Why?
And well, I would want to know if I was a university student and I was paying to stay in student accommodation, presumably with students. I want to know if all of a sudden there were people that weren't students who were there, or if there were a lot of mine workers from the Pilbara. I'd want to know why are they here. And I think you should be told.
Who you can copy and who you can't copy.
No, I'm just saying. I think it's a fair enough question to ask. Why weren't people told?
Well, there are more federal parliamentarians who've been arrested for something or charged with something than asylum seekers in the last 3 years. So should they all have to have behavioural protocols?
Can I just ask you, does it... just before that, does anyone on this panel actually know what behavioural protocols are?
It's not right to say that it's the reporting requirements. There are already reporting requirements in place. That's part of community detention and community processes. So that's not what it means. Look, let's face it, it was a dog whistle. We all saw it as a dog whistle. It was a dog whistle, and now there's revisionism about what is being said.